My name is Eldon, and I'm 34 years old. I'd like to share my story with you, a story of betrayal and redemption. It all started 2 years ago when my wife Cassia and I had been married for 3 years and living together for 5. I've always known that marriage is something that needs to be managed with care. However, the pressure of life often makes us exhausted. In order to improve the family's financial situation, I had to work overtime frequently. Every morning, when Cassia is still dreaming, I'm already in a hurry to go out. When I come home late at night, she is often already asleep. Our time together was drastically compressed, and I could feel that the distance between us was widening a little. At first, the change was subtle. Cassia began to pay more attention to her appearance. She bought a lot of new clothes, and the skirts and tops were much more revealing than before. A few times, when I was packing up her clothes, I accidentally noticed that her underwear style had become very fashionable and bold. Lace edges, straps, see-through dresses. I don't remember her having such underwear before. Cassia began to frequent beauty parlors, spending most of the day there. Every morning, she would spend an hour in front of the mirror applying makeup. The colorful eyeshadow, mascara, and lipstick made her look different. Before she leaves the house, she scrutinizes her makeup and outfit as if she's going on an important date. In addition to her clothes, Cassia's accessories surprised me. Suddenly, she had several designer bags, luxuries that we could never afford on our income. When I asked, she just said they were gifts from friends. But something didn't feel right because the bags looked brand new and expensive, not like gifts from friends. I was puzzled by all the changes. As far as I could remember, Cassia had never been a dressy woman. When we were in love, she always wore makeup, saying it was too much trouble. I once joked that even if she didn't wear makeup, I would still love her forever. She laughed sweetly and said, "I don't believe your sweet words." At that time, her eyes were full of trust and love for me. But now, everything had changed. Cassia was not only different in appearance, but her behavior had become unpredictable. She started going out alone more often, sometimes staying out all night. Whenever I asked her about it, she would always say that she was meeting with friends. But I always felt that something was wrong, as if she was deliberately avoiding my gaze. Once, no matter how late I came home, Cassia would always give me a warm hug and ask me how my day was going. But now, her concern for me seems to have become cold and distant. A few times, I tried to make out with her, but she always said she was too tired. I didn't want to think about it, but a horrible suspicion kept popping into my head. Was Cassia seeing someone else? All these changes, all these expensive bags, all these sexy and revealing clothes, was it all to please another man? I tried to convince myself that it was impossible. Cassia was not like that. But deep inside, a feeling of unease was festering. I became anxious and couldn't sleep at night. I wanted to go to Cassia and ask her face to face, but I was afraid of hearing the answer I was most unwilling to face. Our marriage seems to be heading towards an unknown abyss. I don't know if we can go back to the old days, to the home that was full of laughter and sweetness. The only thing I knew was that I couldn't go on like this. I had to do something. I had to find out the truth, no matter how cruel it was. After all, I'd rather face the truth than the uncertainty and suspicion, even if it meant the end of our marriage. As time went on, Cassia's changes became more and more apparent. In addition to changes in dress, she began to become very picky about some daily chores. For example, she suddenly began to dislike the ordinary milk I bought and insisted on drinking a certain imported brand of low-fat milk. I remember that she never cared about this before and always said with a smile, "Milk is milk, there is no difference." Another time, I bought our favorite takeout as usual, but she suddenly said she didn't want to eat, saying it was too greasy and affected her skin. She asked me to buy healthy ingredients and let her cook. This is fine, but the problem is that she hardly knows how to cook, and she always tries to get out of the cooking job. I don't understand why she's suddenly so particular about what she eats. Cassia has even begun to be picky about her taste in home decor. The sofa and curtains that we chose together when we got married. She now says they look cheap and make her lose face when entertaining friends. I tried to explain to her that we couldn't afford new furniture on our income, but she just gave me a cold look and said I didn't know about quality of life. Every detail of the change disturbed me. It was as if this woman was no longer the Cassia I knew. I tried to communicate with her, to understand why she had changed so much. But every time I mentioned it, she either said nothing perfunctorily, or simply acted annoyed and said I was making a big deal out of it. Once, I couldn't help myself and asked her directly if she was unhappy with our life. She suddenly lost her temper and said I always doubted her and didn't trust her, then slammed the door. I froze in place, not knowing what to do. The trust between us seemed to be collapsing a little. I started to get more and more anxious. I kept thinking back to our past and tried to find out what the problem was. We used to love each other so much. How did we end up like this? Did I do something wrong? Did I ignore her feelings? Countless questions lingered in my mind, but I could not find the answer. I tried to save our marriage with more care and love. I bought her favorite flowers, prepared surprise dinners for her, and gave her the gifts she always wanted on her birthday. But none of these efforts seemed to touch the iceberg in her heart. She accepted the flowers and gifts, but her face was not as happy as before. She was also not interested in my surprise dinner, just a few symbolic bites, and then said she had no appetite. I can feel that the distance between us is growing. We used to talk about everything, but now it's hard for us to carry on a conversation. She wouldn't tell me what she was thinking, and it was getting harder and harder for me to understand her behavior. We are like two strangers, living under the same roof, but leading different lives. In the face of Cassia's distancing and coldness, I realized that there was a serious communication gap between us. I knew that if we couldn't talk it over, the problem would only get deeper. So I began to try various ways to break the silence between us. I tried to bring up lighter topics at dinner, such as a funny story about our first date or a movie we both liked. I hoped that by reminiscing about the good old days, I could arouse her deepest feelings for me. But she was always distracted and ended the conversation with a few casual responses. I've also tried to be more direct. Once, I worked up the courage to hold her hand after dinner and said sincerely, "Cassia, I think we need to talk. I feel like you've had something on your mind lately, so if I've done something wrong, please tell me and we'll work it out together, okay?" But she just pulled back and said coldly, "There's nothing to talk about. I'm fine." Then she went upstairs to her bedroom. I even tried asking her to go for a weekend walk in the park when she was in a good mood, like we used to do when we were in love. I thought maybe she would be more willing to open up in a relaxed environment. But she always excuses herself, saying she has to work overtime or has a friend's party. It's been a long time since we've gone for a walk together. Gradually, I realized that Cassia seemed to be consciously avoiding deeper communication with me. Whenever I tried to talk about our relationship, she would always change the subject or simply remain silent. She was spending more and more time with work and friends, and coming home later and later. Sometimes, she would even sleep on the living room couch to avoid sleeping with me, saying that she was too tired to work. I felt more lonely and helpless than ever. We were living under the same roof, but we felt like strangers. After another unsuccessful attempt to communicate with Cassia, I realized that I alone might not be able to truly understand her. Cassia seemed determined to exclude me from her life, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach her inner thoughts. I felt so frustrated and desperate that I didn't know what to do. It was at this point that an idea occurred to me, even though it made me feel a little guilty and uneasy. I decided to hire a private detective to help me investigate Cassia's whereabouts. I knew it was unethical, but I had no other choice. I had to know the truth, even if it hurt me. After some searching, I found a private investigator named Gideon. During our first meeting, I confessed my situation and my suspicions. To my surprise, Gideon seemed to take the situation in stride. He told me that he had seen many similar cases in his career. He assured me that he would do his best to help me find out the truth. And so the investigation began. For the next few weeks, I pretended that everything was normal while anxiously awaiting news of Gideon. Every night, when Cassia came home late at night or didn't come home at all, I was filled with speculation and worry. I kept imagining what she was doing and whether she was really with another man, as I suspected. These thoughts were like nightmares that lingered in my mind. About 2 weeks later, Gideon sent me his first report. It detailed Cassia's activities over the last 2 weeks. From the report, it appeared that Cassia was leading a double life. The report showed that on June 12th, June 15th, and June 18th, Cassia went straight from work to an upscale bar in the city center, staying late into the night each time. And on June 14th and June 17th, she went to a private club and stayed there from early evening until the early morning. On these occasions, Cassia was always dressed in revealing clothing and heavy makeup. The report also included photographs of Cassia wearing an ultra-short skirt and a low-cut blouse, laughing and joking with a group of men and women, one of which clearly captured her dancing on the dance floor with a man whose hands were on her buttocks and who appeared to be unconcerned. Seeing the photographs and the reports gave me a wave of vertigo. I couldn't believe that this was my wife, the woman I had thought I would spend my life with. But the evidence was there, irrefutable. I asked Gideon to continue the investigation, even though I had an answer inside me. I needed hard evidence, even if it would tear my heart out. The next 2 weeks were the worst of my life. I spent every day in a state of fear and anxiety, dreading to hear from Gideon. At the same time, I was constantly questioning myself about what I had done wrong to make Cassia betray our marriage. I even began to blame myself, thinking that it was my neglect that pushed Cassia into the arms of another man. Finally, on a somber afternoon, I received Gideon's final investigation report. The moment I opened the report, my heart almost stopped. In the report, Gideon provided me with solid evidence of Cassia's infidelity. He documented Cassia's secret meetings with her colleague Lysander. The report shows that they met at least 6 times in the past month, each time after work or on weekends. They had traveled to upscale restaurants, hotels, and even a private villa in the suburbs. The report was accompanied by several videos and photographs taken by a miniature camera installed by Gideon. In the videos, I could clearly see Cassia and Lysander kissing each other with such passion and intensity that it was as if the world had ceased to exist. In one photo, they were walking hand in hand into a hotel, and Cassia's face was beaming with happiness, a smile I hadn't seen on her face in a long time. When I saw all this, I felt the heavens spinning and tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. Though I had already had my suspicions, I still found it hard to accept the truth when it was laid bare in front of me. I couldn't believe that our vows, our love, had been shattered by her hand. I felt immense anger, sadness, and despair, and I didn't know how to face this cruel reality. I watched the photos and videos over and over again, and every time I did, my heart ached as if it had been cut by a knife. I tried to find some clues, hoping that it was all just a misunderstanding, but the evidence was there, irrefutable. I realized that our marriage had come to an end. I didn't know how to face Cassia or how to move on with my life. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I began to question our entire marriage and what I knew about Cassia. I used to think we were the best people in the world at knowing each other, but now it seems I never really knew her. Despite my grief, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep fooling myself. I had to face reality, no matter how harsh it was. When I learned from Gideon's report that Cassia was cheating on me, I felt my whole world come crashing down. Every frame of those photos and videos was like a sharp blade that stabbed me in the heart. I felt extremely angry and betrayed. I couldn't believe that the wife I loved so much, the partner I had vowed to be with for the rest of my life, would cheat on me so cruelly. After the initial shock and pain, my heart began to fill with resentment toward Cassia. I hated her for cheating, I hated her for betraying me, and I hated her for ruining our marriage. Whenever I closed my eyes, images of her making out with Lysander came to mind, making me feel sick and desperate. I began to question our entire relationship and whether she had ever really loved me. But at the same time, deep in my heart, there is still a part of me that loves her. We have known each other for 7 years and loved each other for 5 years. And there are so many wonderful memories that we can't just forget them. I think of the sweetness of our first date, the happiness of our marriage, and the vision we had for the future. These memories are like sharp knives that cut my heart into pieces. I was torn between anger and love, not knowing how to cope with this sudden shock. I began to reflect on our marriage and my own behavior in the relationship. I asked myself if it was my negligence and neglect that pushed Cassia into the arms of another man. Was I so focused on my work that I ignored her feelings? Each of these questions made me feel guilty and uneasy. I realized that I was also responsible for the breakdown of the marriage. But no matter what, Cassia's infidelity is unforgivable. The fact that she had hurt me and betrayed our marriage was irrefutable. After a few days of pain and remorse, I made up my mind to make Cassia pay for her behavior. I wanted her to feel the pain I was feeling now, and I wanted her to regret betraying our marriage. I began to plan an elaborate revenge. I knew that Cassia cared most about her reputation in the company and among her friends. She had worked so hard to create an image of the perfect wife and professional woman, and if that image was destroyed, she would be devastated. My plan for revenge was divided into several steps. First, I was going to send an anonymous letter to Cassia's boss detailing not only her cheating behavior, but also the photos and video Gideon had taken of her making out with Lysander, and I knew he would be furious if he saw this evidence. Because Cassia is a very ethical and corporate-oriented person, I knew that her boss, who was a very ethical and company-oriented person, would be furious if he saw this evidence, and Cassia would probably lose her job and her proud career would be ruined. Secondly, I will send a message to our mutual friends in a concerned tone, telling them that I have stumbled upon evidence of Cassia's infidelity. I would pretend to be sad and confused and ask them to give me some advice. I knew that once the gossip got out, it would spread like wildfire and Cassia's image in her circle of friends would be in tatters, and she would be the butt of everyone's jokes at the end of the day. Step 3. I will post an anonymous post on the internet exposing Cassia's cheating behavior in detail. I'm going to include links to the photos and videos in the post so that everyone can judge her character. I know how powerful the internet is, and once this post is reposted and commented on, Cassia's reputation will be completely ruined. She will be ashamed of herself and will never be able to hold her head up again. I did a lot of preparation for this program. I opened several anonymous email addresses and signed up for several social media accounts that I had never used before. I carefully categorized the photos and videos, picking out the most powerful ones and storing them on several different cloud drives. I even wrote a letter to her boss and an online exposure post, revising it over and over again to achieve the best results. In the process, I felt a twisted pleasure. Whenever I imagined Cassia's face when she learned the truth, when I imagined her life falling apart, I felt the satisfaction of revenge. I couldn't wait to carry out the plan, couldn't wait to see her in pain. But at the same time, my heart was full of contradictions and struggles. On the one hand, I couldn't forgive Cassia for her betrayal, and I thought she should pay for her behavior. But on the other hand, I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. After a long internal struggle, I finally decided to carry out my plan of revenge. That night, while Cassia slept, I turned on my computer and began my operation. I began by sending an email to Cassia's supervisor, anonymously. It described her cheating behavior in detail and included links to the photos and videos. I knew that this email would be the bombshell that would destroy her career. Next, I logged into the social media accounts I had signed up for and started messaging our mutual friends. In a sad and confused tone, I told them that I had accidentally found evidence that Cassia was cheating on me. I asked them to give me some advice on how to deal with this harsh truth. Finally, I posted anonymously on several well-known forums. The post was titled, "My Wife Betrayed Me," and described in detail Cassia's infidelity. I also included links to the photos and videos, inviting people to judge her behavior. When I was done, I closed the computer and breathed a long sigh of relief. I knew that I had lit the fuse, and it was up to me to see how the information would fester. The next day, when I woke up, my cell phone was flooded with messages from Cassia's supervisor, who in an email denounced her behavior and demanded that she resign immediately or else she would be fired. Our friends also expressed their shock and sympathy, saying they couldn't believe Cassia would do such a thing, and offered me their utmost support. That post has been retweeted and commented on thousands of times. Countless netizens left comments under the post, condemning Cassia's infidelity and calling her an unapologetic betrayer. Some even took out her personal information and publicly humiliated her online. I expected all this. I watched the cyberviolence with cold eyes and saw Cassia's life fall apart overnight. I think she feels the same way I did when I found out the truth. Sure enough, that afternoon, Cassia stormed home. She cried and asked me why I had done this, why I had ruined everything for her. She said she knew she was wrong and asked me to forgive her and give her a chance to start over. But I can't forgive her anymore. Her betrayal, the damage she had done to me, was irreparable. I told her coldly that I wanted a divorce. I want her to pay for her behavior. In the following days, we began the long process of divorce proceedings. In court, I presented Gideon's investigation report as evidence that this was a fault divorce. According to the law in our state, in a fault divorce, the party not at fault gets a larger share of the property. In the end, the judge awarded me 70% of our joint property, including our house and most of our savings. Cassia, on the other hand, got the remaining 30%. Upon hearing this judgment, Cassia sat down in her chair and sobbed uncontrollably. I, too, felt an emptiness. After the divorce, I moved out of our former home and started a new life. But the wounds of the marriage could not be healed so quickly. I often woke up in my dreams with images of Cassia and Lysander together. I began to drink heavily and was depressed all day long. I realized that I needed help. So I started to seek psychotherapy to try to understand and deal with my trauma from a professional point of view. Through several months of therapy, I gradually came out of the darkness, re-examined the marriage, and reflected on my own problems. At the same time, I also try to find new joys in life. I picked up my college hobby, photography, and started to record the beautiful moments of life with my camera. Every weekend, I would drive to the countryside to take pictures of the natural scenery. In the embrace of nature, I feel a great sense of inner peace. I also have a puppy named Max, and every day after work, I take Max for a walk in the park. Watching him run around in the grass makes me feel relaxed and happy, and Max has become an indispensable part of my life, and his companionship makes me feel less lonely. Gradually, I have found that life is full of color again. I have learned to live with the pain of the past, even though I can't completely forget it. I know that life is a process of falling down and getting up again, and every fall is an opportunity to grow. In retrospect, the divorce was probably the right decision. It gave me the opportunity to re-examine myself and reshape my life. Although the price was high, I believe that I will become more mature and stronger after going through this. And as for Cassia, I've chosen to let it go. I don't hate her anymore, and I don't love her anymore. I just hope that she can learn from this lesson and be a better person in her future life. After going through the pain of divorce and the process of self-healing, I came to realize that I couldn't let the hurts of the past define my entire life. I decided to start over and rebuild my social life. I started attending social events and meeting new people. At a friend's birthday party, I met Isadora, a counselor with a warm smile and keen insight. We talked a lot, from work to life, from hobbies to outlook on life. I realized that we have a lot in common. After that, Isadora and I started to date more frequently. We went to the movies, went on outings, and discussed the meaning of life. We went to the movies, went on picnics, discussed the meaning of life, and Isadora was always able to detect my inner troubles and give me the most sincere advice. I remember once I mentioned my past in front of her, about Cassia's betrayal. I thought I had let it go, but when I talked about those details, I couldn't help but shed tears. Isadora didn't say anything, but quietly held my hand and gave me a firm hug. At that moment, I felt warm and comforted. With Isadora's encouragement, I started to keep a journal to record my thoughts and feelings. Whenever I was in a negative mood, she would listen patiently and guide me to look at things from a different perspective. Gradually, I realized that I had become more open-minded and had a new perspective on life. Isadora also helped me rebuild my relationship with my family. At her suggestion, I reached out to my parents and siblings and sincerely apologized to them for my estrangement during the marriage. They were all very understanding and supportive, which gave me an overwhelming sense of warmth. Every day I spend with Isadora, I feel so much joy and fulfillment. Together we make plans for the future and dream about our life together. I realized that despite the betrayal I had suffered, my heart was still capable of love, and Isadora is the best gift God has ever given me. I proposed to Isadora in a cozy restaurant on a winter night, a year into our relationship. When I opened the ring box and saw the tears in her eyes, I knew that this was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. Now, Isadora and I have been married for a year. We have a lovely daughter, whom we named Hope, which means hope. Whenever I hold Hope and look at her innocent smile, I think to myself that life is like this, full of hope and possibilities. Looking back over the years, I have experienced so much pain and struggle, but it is these experiences that have shaped me into the person I am today. They have taught me how to love, how to forgive, and how to get back up after a fall. I am sharing this story in the hope that it will inspire my friends who are going through a similar situation. I want to tell you that no matter how much betrayal and hurt you have experienced, life will always give you new hope. The important thing is not to let the pain of the past define your future. Face it bravely, repair it, rebuild it, and you will find your own happiness. Remember, nothing can bring you down unless you allow it. Every time you fall, it's for the next time you fly. Believe in yourself, believe in life, and good things will happen. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.